we start?
Yes, please, please.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Thank you. It's such a delight for me to be in the midst of this, what should I call, a glittering galaxy of very distinguished dignitaries who are present today. I'm truly happy to be addressing them on such a vital topic in the steel sector. What does the future hold for the steel sector? And the policymakers in India, are talking about a big leap that our production capacity must reach 300 million tons by 2030. Are we ready? That's a big question. I'm sure a positive state of mind certainly helps, but we also have to look at what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, how do we address the challenges, etc. Therefore, over the next few minutes, let me kind of set the context for a very fruitful discussion about India's steel sector and how we are ready for the big leap. Okay. Now, primarily, why are we discussing steel? Obviously, these statements are quite common. I'm sure you heard in most of the conferences that it's a critical infrastructure metal, industrial metal for infrastructure, construction, defense, space, etc., etc. More important, if you look at history, there's a strong positive correlation between economic growth and steel consumption. And that is why steel is called a growth commodity. Okay? And therefore, it only makes sense for us to discuss steel. And steel is an important and critical industrial metal for our country to fuel our economic growth. Now, the world steel production in 2024 was an estimated 1,885 million tons, of which obviously all of us know China is the world's largest producer, accounting for a little over 50% at 1,005 million tons. We in India pride ourselves to be the world's second largest producer. Yes, without any doubt, we are the world's second largest, but we are by far the world's second largest. Our production last year was 149 million tons, but it's growing. That's the positive. The direction is very clear. Now, the steel sector obviously is a deregulated sector. Prices are not determined by the policymakers, but prices are determined by the market forces, demand and supply dynamics, global market conditions, raw material availability, logistics costs, power costs, fuel costs, etc., etc. But what is also important for us to know is that the government of India does not interfere in the marketplace, but it acts actually as a facilitator by creating a very conducive policy environment for the development of this steel sector, with particular focus on small and medium producers, which they are very, very important part of our production ecosystem. Now, when we look at the numbers, India's finished steel capacity and production trends last 3 years, the numbers are all here. I'm not going to repeat the numbers, but very clearly, post-COVID lockdown, there was some apparent loss of capacity, and therefore, from about 1.6 million tons, we lost production capacity. But 23 to 24, it has bounced back to 170 million tons, and in 24-25, it's now closer to 200 million tons. That's the capacity. And from 200 million tons, we're now talking about a 50% jump to 300 million tons by 2030. But we'll come to that a little later. Look at the production trend, very, very important, rapidly rising by 10 million tons between 21-22 and 22-23, and again, a bigger jump of 16 million tons 1 year later, 23-24. Our consumption has kept pace with the increase in production, and therefore, in our country, our production marginally exceeds consumption. The domestic demand is largely met by domestic production. This is the claim, of course, made by the government of India in even parliament questions. But despite this claim, all of us know that we in India, we are importers of finished steel. These are the numbers. Finished steel imports in 1,000 tons. Last 3 years, I've given these numbers, and we can see very clearly the numbers are rising rapidly from 4.6 million tons to 6.0 million tons to 8.3 million tons. I think that's a big number. China, of course, is the largest supplier, exporter of steel, finished steel to India, followed by Korea. Korea's numbers are rapidly increasing, competing with China very, very closely, of course. Then comes Japan, Vietnam, Taiwan, etc., etc. Therefore, the numbers are very clear. The numbers are growing. Should these numbers grow, are we do we really need this imported steel? Can we become self-sufficient and self-reliant in steel? These are big questions which I'm sure our panelists, the elite panel, would certainly discuss these questions. Now, the government of India has taken several initiatives. One, to reduce import, and of course to improve our competitiveness. We have the productivity-linked incentive scheme for specialty steel. Then you have steel quality control orders. These orders are very important because the government is keen to eliminate substandard steel products coming into this market, including imported steel products. Therefore, we have the quality control orders. And then you have the steel import monitoring system. This is in place of a second version. Version 2 of that SIMS is there since July 2024 in order to monitor import. And I've always believed that it makes sense for the policymakers to have a system of import monitoring, because that will give them data. And once you have data, once the policymaker has data, then he'll be able to make interventions more meaningfully at the appropriate time. And then to reduce import and improve competitiveness, you also have anti-dumping duty, countervailing duty, safeguard measures, etc., against safeguard measures against import surge. We have, I'm sure all of us here know about the national steel policy that was announced in 2017. And what is the current scenario now? India's crude steel production just crossed 150 million tons, 151.1 million tons in 24-25, against a total steel making capacity currently of approximately 200 million tons. I think there is another estimate which says 205 million tons, but I think it is closer to 200 million tons. But the important point, the positive side to the story, is that our demand is growing. If you look at demand growth over the last 3 years or so, it's been growing in excess of 10%, say between 10 and 12%, which is a very positive sign. And as I said earlier, there's a strong positive correlation between economic growth and steel consumption, and it's there. It's evident as far as our country is concerned. Now the policymakers are talking about, and the industry is also talking about, our aim to expand our steel making capacity to 300 million tons by 2030-31, which is currently 200 million tons. And therefore, we are planning for a 50% increase, 50% expansion in steel production capacity. And also, last 2 years, we've been net importers of steel, with imports rising to a record 9.5 million tons. The question, therefore, I think today's the important conversation, the crux of the conversation, in my view, should be and would be, what is the strategy to achieve the target of 300 million tons capacity by 2030? There are some questions which are bothering me. I'm sure the experts have the answers. I also have some thoughts in my mind, but the experts have to speak. Does India have the resolve? I want to call it the steely resolve, the political will, the steely resolve to achieve this ambitious target of 300 million tons? One question. Second, do we have adequate raw material? Do we have enough iron ore? Do we have coking coal? Or are we going to be dependent on import for coking coal in particular? These are questions. And there is an estimate, at least there was an estimate in 2018, if I remember correctly, of the need for $10 billion investment to reach the capacity of 300 million tons. I don't know what the current financial requirement is. I'll probably have that number, but I'm not able to readily recall. But where will this money come from is a big question. And how much of the capacity will actually get utilized? Because even if you see 24-25 against 200 million tons capacity, our actual production or utilization production was 150 million tons. That is, we've used three-fourths of the capacity. So how much will actually be used? And of course, most important, the impact on environment. This is something which is very, very important. And will we be able to advance sustainability principles in steel making? And of course, most important, will our domestic steel demand keep pace with our production? These are questions which I think we need to find answers to. And as Bina mentioned, the current steel consumption is about 100 kilograms per capita, that is per person per year, which is expected or projected to rise to about 160 kilograms per person per year by 2030. What is critical in my view is we need to ensure our raw material availability, or I call it the raw material security. And therefore, we need to have a robust strategy in place. Extremely important for us to have a consistent availability of essential raw materials, coking coal, limestone, iron ore, and of course, critical elements such as magnesium, nickel, chromium, etc., etc. Look at the iron ore production in the last 3 years. I think the numbers are all here. It's rising very clearly, and it stood at in 23-24 about 276 million tons of iron ore, of which, of course, we exported 45 million tons. We must remember, to that extent, our domestic availability will be only about 230 million tons or so. But by 2030, if we have a production target of 300 million tons, and if we are going to use a very substantial part of the production target, we will probably need about 450 million tons of iron ore. Depending on quality, we need either 1.5 or 1.6 tons of iron ore to make 1 ton of steel. And then therefore, do we have that kind of proven reserves of iron ore is a question. I'm sure industry experts will be able to educate us on that. But what is also important is beneficiation. That we have a lot of low quality ore that is available, which actually makes the cost expensive. But if we are able to do beneficiation, I'm sure we are able to cut costs. And second important one is the coking coal. 160 million tons is what will be required. And currently we are very largely import dependent. Therefore, what can we do? What can we do to augment our domestic production of coking coal? These are questions which must engage all of us. All of us are interested in India's economic growth. All of us are interested in India's steel sector, growth in India's steel sector. Therefore, these are questions that all of us must find answers. As if all this was not enough, we have now the Trump effect. I call it the Trump tariff turmoil. Okay, in April, that person in the White House imposed 25% tariff on steel import, and recently has doubled that tariff import into the United States. It is doubled to 50%, both steel and aluminium, of course. Now, if we look at the specific numbers of India's finished steel export to the US, it's of course been quite fluctuating, and therefore from 165,000 tons, it declined actually to about 95,000 tons, and again I think it's increased increased slightly to 137,000 tons. But we must also remember currently India and the United States are negotiating a bilateral trade agreement. What will be the outcome of the bilateral trade agreement? We don't know. It's still under negotiation. To what extent the metal sector will be impacted? We don't know. But I know for sure the agriculture sector is going to be impacted because I'm closely associated with the agriculture, trade, and industry. And therefore, that India will have to give the US a lot of concessions as far as agriculture and agribusiness is concerned. Let's wait and see how the metal sector is going to be impacted by the bilateral trade agreement, which is under negotiation, but will probably be finalized by September, which is what I hear. Therefore, if if we have a large capacity, we are looking for raw material, and if the US continues, if Mr. Trump does not compromise on his 50% duty on steel import, and he's also talking about a higher rate of duty on steel import from China. And if he doesn't compromise, then there will be a steel import into the US will decline from countries like China. But what will happen? Even Vietnam, even Japan, Korea, for example, most of those countries, in my view, may actually try to target India for exporting their steel into the Indian market. And therefore, that makes our domestic producers, domestic production, a lot more vulnerable to import. And as we know, Chinese Chinese steel sector is very highly subsidized, but we'll come to that maybe during the discussion. So that's a risk we need to take on board, and it's for the policymakers. Now, when we look at the geopolitical situation, it's absolutely uncertain. It's quite fraught. We don't know what's going to happen. Therefore, under these conditions, that we need to discuss our ambition to expand our steel making capacity by 50% from 200 million tons to 300 million tons. My own sense is the target is not a daunting target. I think it is still doable. It is achievable with with resolve. But there will be challenges, and therefore political will is required. The industry, all the stakeholders will have to cooperate, will have to work together, and will have to ensure a certain policy environment that supports our journey towards building or creating a 300 million ton capacity, for which obviously policy support is necessary. Research support is necessary from an environment angle in particular, from greening steel production angle in particular. We also need a huge amount of investment support. Therefore, with this, I think I want to I think I've set the context. I just want to say a big thank you. I also usually have a disclaimer. I am not a trader. I'm not in the industry. I'm an independent person. I'm an economist. I'm an analyst, and therefore I have no trading interest in any commodity, including metals. And therefore, with this, let me say good luck. God bless you all. Over to Bina.